We humans and our activities are proven to cause harm to our environment. We overconsume resources and do reckless things that pose threat to the natural properties of our planet. And these in return produce man-made disasters or anthropogenic hazards. These human-induced occurrences leave damage not only to the land and water resources but also to the biological one and the entirety of the animals that are affected. Thus, this leaves the question, are we humans invasive? This is an already existing debate that questions our classification on whether or not we cause harm to the native plants and animals, particularly in water, as an ecological reservoir and water biogeochemical cycle. To answer this, here are some of the points that needs to be elaborated and explored first.
Hi, my name is Ivan Ross M. Reyes and I will be explaining the anthropogenic effects on the water cycle. So, for the first point, we have here the frequency of human impact. So, changes in the hydrological cycle caused by anthropogenic influences vary in scale and frequency depending on the forms and severity of the human impact, physical geography or physiography for short, and the extent of the territory affected. So, depending on the factors listed, as I've mentioned, the resulting changes will then range from local to global in scope. So, such activities like logging, urbanization, and land plowing on small areas and watersheds may have a significant impact on evaporation and runoff. Depending on the physiographic features and the length of man's effect, these improvements can grow over several years in various ways. Around the same time, even far in the future, the above anthropogenic forces would be unable to have any major impact on the global hydrological cycle. What supports this statement is the Le Chatelier principle. So the theory of Le Chatelier is an intuition regarding reaction chemical equilibria. It states that increases in a system's temperature, pressure, volume, or concentration can cause predictable and opposing changes in the system, resulting in a new equilibrium state. So the question that boggles us is, can this principle be applied on water to water? Well, yes. What happens is that pure liquids experience almost no change in concentration in chemical equilibria. So for all intents and purposes, liquids are not affected by Le Chatelier considerations. So for example, suppose that we have a closed system consisting of ice in the equilibrium, okay? With liquid water at some temperature and some pressure. So for a constant temperature bath, it is initially at equilibrium. We force the transition by transferring the container to a new bath with a higher temperature, but not high enough to remove any of the ice. So the forced adjustment is a temperature rise, to put it in another way, heat addition. According to the philosophy, the device can react by absorbing heat, which it can do by turning ice into liquid. The pressure would reduce because liquid water takes up less space than the same mass of ice. We assume that as the temperature arises, the pressure at which the ice and water are at equilibrium decreases. That is, as friction reduces, the melting point rises.
We are becoming more conscious of our environmental effects, but many of the activities we do have become so embedded in our way of life that it is difficult to change them. Different countries, as we know, have varying amounts of water, but our tendencies as humans to use water do not differ in any way. Water is one of our essential needs after all. These actions may have a significant impact on the water cycle. Some of these actions consist of irrigation, deforestation, and etc. First is irrigation. How does irrigation cause an impact on the water cycle? The expansion of agricultural practices brought about by the advancement of irrigation poses a potential to cause increased soil erosion, pollution of the surface water and groundwater from agricultural biocides, deterioration of the water quality, increased nutrient levels in irrigation and the groundwater that may cause algal blooms which blocks the waterway. Another is the proliferation of aquatic weeds and eutrophication in irrigation canals and downstream waterways. Another direct negative impact of irrigation arises from over-extraction. Over-extraction causes the lowering of the water table, land subsidence, decrease in water quality, as well as the intrusion of salt water in coastal areas.
Our water supply is in danger and faces many problems, many of which are caused by human activities. It includes sedimentation, erosion, climate change, and expansion in urban areas. The removal of trees or deforestation is having a major impact on the water cycle, and it is frequently occur as a result of habitat changes, such as forest clearing, reduction of natural habitats due to agriculture, urbanization, road construction, and surface mining. Each form of landscape transition will have its own unique effect, which will be normally felt directly or indirectly on natural habitats in our water supplies. Since trees and plants are responsible for absorbing fresh water, and deforestation prevents it from being poured back into the atmosphere, disrupting the water cycle's equilibrium.
Pollution. So as we know that pollution is directly connected to human activities and does not occur naturally. Water pollution occurs when we dump substances, materials, intentionally or unintentionally to bodies of water. Major factors that are contributing to this area are those in the industrial sector like mining and manufacturing and other more. Within these processes creates disposable waste materials, chemicals that seeps into the water. Or in other cases, improper waste disposal of garbage is another reason or cause of water pollution. The effects of water pollution are devastating not only to the environment but also economically. An example of this is a massive fish kill due to red tide. As we know, red tide occurs naturally, but due to pollutants, the processes gets speed up and increases the number of algae present. Because of this, there will be a limited supply of aquatic products and materials within the area, and the resources that are not yet dead are rejected due to the toxins being present in them. We have also scenarios of water that are contaminated that got evaporated, forming into acid rains. It can have an impact to human health, and additionally, buildings and other materials gets eroded by it.
Urbanization is a serious threat into our water cycle because it disrupts the natural water currents, and water becomes tainted with tar and other toxins when it comes contact with urban surfaces. And due to this, stormwater is produced. And due to the lack of filtering facilities in stormwater drains, toxins are transported straight into our rivers, bays, and oceans.
Hi, I'll be explaining about epigenetics and other factors of water affecting it. So, epigenetics is a study about heritable change in gene expression without a change in the DNA sequence. So, basically, this concerns on the genetic makeup, gene type, phenotype of the organism. So, how does water affect epigenetics? As I have said, epigenetics is connected to the DNA stuff of the organism. Also on ecotoxicology. Usually this is about adaptability, mutations, and disease towards the organism. Like for example, some organisms, animals, will develop discoloration on their body. Well, it is probably linked to the environment or food they intake or consume. Others will have side effects like diseases like cancer or infertility.
You may ask, Group 1, what is an invasive species? Well, these are the kinds of living organisms that would cause harm ecologically or economically when these exotic or non-indigenous species are separated from the predators, parasites, and diseases that keep such in balance of their native environments. When these invasive species spread throughout the place, it would cause the extinction of natives, destroy biodiversity, and increase the competition for consuming the limited resources. These instances result in the undermining of ecosystem on the coastal and Great Lakes. Such consequences will greatly overpower the quality and as well as the distribution of water supplies we currently take advantage of. Such fresh waters are fundamental to the ecosystem services such as water supply, electricity generation, navigation, and habitat provision. However, when such invasive species interrupts the steady state living, it will contribute to the further destruction of the essential components of the ecosystem. As this affects the ecosystem, we can anticipate whether there may be relation to the water cycle. We must recall that the water cycle is indeed important in an ecosystem since first, we all live in a water planet where water covers 71% of the Earth's surface. Another point, all organisms are made up of mostly water wherein we all need water to survive. Second, when water dissolves, nutrients wherein it is the most natural way of transportation of the nutrients between ecosystems, and lastly is of course the hydrologic cycle that can be interpreted as the cycle of natural renewal of the water quality. And so if we ask ourselves, are we humans one of the most invasive species? Think about it while I discuss the water cycle's precipitation's effect on the intensity of the climate change. When water evaporates from the land, which will eventually turn into rain or snow, the climate change sharpens as the air temperature increases. Water evaporation increases, leading to the dry out of the soils. After the rain falls, runs to the ground, to the rivers, then the soil remains dry, leading to the risk of drought. So why does the climate change occur in the first place? Mainly because of the human activity. Carbon dioxide is the heat-trapping gas that is responsible for warming that occurs in the cement manufacturing as well as the coal, gas, and oil that are being burned regularly.
No matter what we do to hide or justify our ways of living, we cannot deny the fact that humans have also become a liability to the environment. We have built this whole system where we take more than what we give, and none of it makes up for our shortcomings. To some, although this issue seems to be not much of a concern, given the fact that our world is composed mostly of water, the supply of water and its resources may have been contaminated and even depleting due to a lot of factors such as overconsumption, natural phenomena, animal waste, disruption of ecosystems, and more. This in fact only goes to show what most people are not aware of, that everything around us is accounted for as an invasive species, which in return contributes to our modern environmental problems like for example the lack of clean and safe drinking water. And although some practices plan to protect our environment and save resources or even reservoirs, a lot of the consequences resulting from so-called innovation continue to affect and destroy it as well. As a student and part of the future set of professionals, it is our duty to come up with designs that could supply the needed help and solution in order to combat or at least lessen the environmental impacts that it may procure. In that way, we may start to build a foundation for the future plans that may later on be the actual solution to the problems that we are currently facing today. For now, it is best for our generation to observe, absorb, and act, and maybe by the littlest act we do, we could save a drop of what we waste for those who were most in need.